All right, welcome to another episode of Political Animals. I'm Mustafa Janadu in Washington, D.C., and Kunle Williams is here with me in Lagos. We try to bring you an analytical perspective of what's going on in the world geopolitically, also with the way things are going cynically. So, Kunle, how's everything? How's Lagos?
Yeah, Lagos has been relatively calm and quiet. We've been having a few political dramas in and out of UK, trying to disturb some political parties from convening,
Oh,
and
yeah,
um,
coalition.
that's been at the top of news for now.
Oh, here's the big, beautiful disaster. The U.S.
Yeah,
is defunding its government, is defunding the country, but they want to spend on wars. Anyway, so speaking of spending, let's start off with NATO. So who's the head of NATO? The European guy. What's his name? Hespeth or something like that. Yeah, Hespeth or something. No, not Hespeth is the
NATO,
American guy. Well, anyway, the NATO chief says that Russia is producing an alarming amount of artillery. If what is correct, I think they're producing 3 million shells or artillery pieces a year, which is three times more. That was last year, 3 million, three times more than the U.S. and Europe and all of NATO combined. And apparently now, the Russia is making in 3 months. Three times more. They're making three times more than Europe makes a whole year in just 3 months. So that means they're making 12 times more than Europe in a whole year. So it's clear that Russia is producing a lot of ammunition. They need to because they're in a war with Ukraine. That's why they're creating this because they're in this to win. On top of that, they can afford to spend this because their economy is good and they're not like the U.S. or European countries in which almost all of your money is spent on weapons manufacturing and weapons. USA spends more than China, Russia, and Korea together on its military spending. So what's happening is that the U.S. is the bank for European ammunition production, and the U.S. is in an economic decline. So there's not going to be much weapon production for these guys, and they're jealous that Russia has it. They're saying that if we let Russia go like this, all of us will be speaking Russian, which to me is the most absurd statement I've ever heard. They're basically saying that Russian is building up artillery to take over the world. No, they're not. Building artillery to bomb the hell out of Ukraine until you guys stop promising to arm Ukraine. Once you guys say that Ukraine can't join the NATO, and once you denazify Ukraine or at least de-armor them and make sure that their army is neutral, then Russia will stop. But they don't want to. They want to continue with all of their wars going all over the world. They want to continue with Middle East crisis, and they want to continue funding Ukraine in an attempt to isolate China and Russia. It's time. I think it's time for them to stop. It's not helping their countries. It's not helping anybody. What are your thoughts? Yeah. In other words,
we literally saw.
there's no strategic reason for Europe to build its army now, unless they want to take weapons, unless they want to take stuff in Africa. Go
Yeah,
ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
we stole the word mouth
Yeah,
because
I
what
anticipated
NATO
what you
has
were going
been
to say.
doing since 1990.
Yeah.
Yes, what NATO has been doing since 1990, claiming they've been on the defensive. Meanwhile, they've been accumulating all the old Eastern Bloc countries and turning them into NATO countries and putting NATO weapons on them. And now they're trying to do that with Ukraine and Georgia. And this is what happens. Now, Russia they have to keep increasing manufacture of weapons because the world has become extremely unstable. Look at Israeli strikes
Yeah.
on Iran, where the G7 countries felt that that was justified. The BRICS countries and the global South felt it was not justified. This is a difference of ideas of understanding of international law by two different bodies of the world. So there must
Yeah.
be a point for that to say this is wrong. And clearly, NATO are in the wrong again. Here, Russia has no intentions of teaching people to speak Russian outside of their areas. In fact, the only areas that they're fighting in are Russian-speaking
Hold on,
areas. They haven't
Real
shown
quick. Sorry to jump in front of you. I was talking to Putin last week and asked him, "Do you want to change everybody speak Russian?" You know what Putin said to me? Niet, niet.
I mean,
Yo,
and
niet.
if they had, yeah, if Russia had decided taking over Western Europe, they wouldn't start with Ukraine. they'll start with all the smaller countries that are neighboring them. They're not going to
Yeah.
start with major countries. They'll start with smaller countries and cut them off from other points of entry before they did that. So that
The way
doesn't
the
make
way the U.S. is doing in the Middle East, the way the
exactly.
U.S. before they come for Iran. Yeah. Sorry.
Yes,
Go ahead.
that doesn't make any sense. They're not trying to attack or threaten other areas of their borders. The only issues they're having is with Ukraine that's trying to join NATO and NATO's encroachment on them. So that is entirely false. We've
Well, it's a
seen
bullshit. And what they're doing is they've already said they want to spend five. European countries said they want to spend 5% of their GDP or on weapons. So what they're doing is they keep on coming on the news to say this to fearmonger the European citizens. You will be learning Russian. You will be speaking Russian if you don't let us take your money. We can't have heat. We can't have food. We can't have school. We have to build an army to stop us from speaking Russian. That's what they're doing. Go ahead. Yeah.
America and the West have had their pants pulled down. They haven't really prepared their ability to fight over long periods of time. They need to start building up those because they're now beginning to realize all their power is projected through force, not through economic. So
That's how the world works. Yeah.
yes, and so Western Europe needs to increase its power through weapons manufacture. I don't think that much of this weaponry is about stopping Russia. It's more about being able to replace the US aid influence that they've lost in Africa and other parts of the world by
Yeah.
America. I think that's what's going on there.
NATO chief is the Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte.
Yeah. Trump
They
is
don't
trying to
even call him by his name on the news. When I was trying to find out his name, they just said NATO chief. NATO chief. Yeah, his name is Rutte. Useless man.
Trump pull America back economically from everywhere. Obviously, he can't do it well, but he can at least try to do it the Ukraine and NATO, where most of actually the spending on military spending is basically, NATO is the main cost of American military doing business. So if they can pull out that, they'd save a lot of money there. But at the same time, it's sort of like saying, I don't want to pay for security guard. I just want to pay for one, and he doesn't need to have.
And here's Trump's idea. If is the whole idea for Trump is for Israel or for the U.S. is for Israel to expand in the Middle East and to take all of the Middle East's oil, and then if they do that, that'll be the basis of the American economy, and they won't need Europe anymore. They won't need NATO. In fact, they'll have a new NATO. It'll be made up of Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and those countries, and they won't have to worry about Europe. Europe needs to see their handwriting on the wall. If I were Europe, I would pivot towards Eurasia and join those guys. Sorry, continue, Kunle. Because I have a feeling the U.S. is going to drop. They're going to drop Europe. Go ahead. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the problem with dropping Europe is Europe has unusual influence over other areas where America simply supports them financially. Europe does have a great deal of reach, even though the damage to the Sahel by the French holdings in Western Africa have been damaged. They still hold a large amount there. There's still other countries on the list.
But see, the thing, though, U.S. has limited resources now, so they just have to pick their battles. So I think they're willing to take an L on those other Sahel countries if they can control all the oil. If they can control 60% of the oil in the world, if they can control 60% of the oil in the world, they're willing to take, because they have no choice. Ideally, they would like to win both. A lot of people believe they started the Ukraine war just to distract Russia so that they could take Syria, which would be actually a brilliant move. The U.S. is not as dumb as we think they are. The war of Ukraine is going to hurt Europe more than it's going to hurt America. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yes. And the new thing about warfare that I'm beginning to notice now that Iran has shown me is that the new warfare is going to be drones and missiles and long-range projectiles. It's not going to be about air forces and aircraft carriers as much as before. It's going to be about cheap technology that can be manufactured en masse. And you're going to see your soldiers in bunkers operating the machineries of war. And that's where warfare is going to in modern warfare. And I think that the global south, particularly Iran and Russia, have a slight head start in that
not
area.
a slight, a massive advance. Russia on Friday did the biggest aerial attack it's ever done on Kiev on Friday, and they used thousands of drones and things. So, so that's the new thing. So we're going to move on to